So welcome to Wednesday night slides number 41. Glad you all could join me here. I am going to get the show started. Got a couple of different segments here. Basically, it's a non-rail portion first, followed by mostly current events. Forgot to turn on my slideshow. I'm doing that right now. There we go. And then I will get the screen going here so you all can see it. As usual, if you want to give a comment or a question, feel free to jump right in. Easiest way to unmute yourself is hit your space bar on your computer and hold it down while you make your comment or question and then release it when you're done. Can everybody see the title slide?
Yep, I can see it.
Thank you.
Hi, Dustin.
Okay, so anyhow, we're going to start off with some Canadian content. Let's head north of the border for some non-rail stuff. We're going to go to Carp, Ontario, outside of Ottawa, into the hills. And in the late 1950s, the prime minister was John Diefenbunker. And he was getting a little concerned because of the Cold War. If the US and the Soviet Union started shooting at each other, the missiles wouldn't go around the world, they go over the world, which would take them directly over Canada. So he authorized the construction of a bunker that could hold up to 600 military and political personnel outside of the capital of Ottawa. And since his name was Diefenbunker, it almost immediately became irreverently called the Diefenbunker. The Diefenbunker was in service throughout the Cold War into the 1990s when it was decommissioned. And when it was decommissioned, it was left as a time capsule. So we're going to venture inside the Diefenbunker here and take a look around. It's all surrounded by fencing, and you go inside through the tunnel. If you're going through the blast doors. Deeper into the hill. And you're in there. We're going to start off in the infirmary. And when it was decommissioned in the 1990s, everything was left as it was. So this 1990s technology is all just sitting there. It's really...
Steve, we're not seeing anything.
You're not seeing anything?
Okay, here, it's all good.
It's all good. Everybody else is seeing stuff? It's only Chris?
Yep, I see stuff.
You see stuff. You see a hospital bed?
Good on this end.
So we're in the infirmary here. Some really bizarre technology going back some 30 years now. Very utilitarian. No file cabinets and plastic chairs and quaint desks. This is the radio station located inside the Diefenbunker. This is how they would broadcast to the rest of Canada any information that needed to be broadcast. Reel-to-reel tapes. State of the art in the 1990s. Then the cafeteria. This is a pretty cool tour. They took you in as a group, but once you were done with the group tour, they turned you loose. You could wander around on your own and go back and look at things that you might have seen on the tour but didn't have time to check out in detail. It was pretty cool. Here's one of the big meeting rooms. most important people up top in the leather chairs, the lower class ones down in the plastic chairs, of course, all the ancient telephones. You got your blue and green phones up top. I'm not sure exactly what the blue and green phones do, but this is the big meeting room here. And you'll notice on the tables, besides the coffee pot and other things, there's ashtrays. That was normal back then. Not so normal now. You can imagine being in a bunker underground with a bunch of smokers. One of the standard offices. Electric typewriters, more ancient computers, more plastic chairs. The map room. These were the offices for the different ministers. They each had their own office. Once again, very utilitarian. And the computer room. And this is the Prime Minister's office. He gets the plush chair, or plusher chair. From what I understand, actually no Prime Minister, past or present, has actually ever been in the Diefenbunker for any reason, not even for a tour. So this office has gone unused, and hopefully it will stay unused. But while I was there, of course, I had to take over Canada. So here I am in the Prime Minister's seat in the Diefenbunker.
Geez, shades of January 6th.
Yeah. So that's a little tour of the Diefenbunker up in Canada. Now we're going to go to some train stuff here. Mostly this is what I've done over the last 30 days or so. And we're going to start off at the end of last month on the Reading Northern. Y'all know I got a soft spot in my heart for Reading T1 locomotives. T1 2124 was what got me started into liking trains. Its sister 2102 made its public passenger debut at the end of May, running from Reading up to Jim Thorpe, Pennsylvania. And here we see it coming up into just below Port Clinton, PA, on the outbound trip. This was quite the sight. This is coming up through East Monomoy Junction. It was raining pretty hard here, and the locomotive was slipping and sliding, and it was just making this incredible sound coming through here. The Reading Northern chose to paint the locomotive in the Iron Horse Rambles paint scheme. In freight service, everything in front of the cab would have been painted black. All the yellow trim you see there would not have been there, and the diamond would not have been on the front. And the silver on the locomotive wheels would not have been there. The yellow trim under the cab and the yellow trim on the tender would have been there in freight service. But for the Iron Horse Rambles, the Reading added some color to the locomotive by adding the yellow accents and the silver tires. And Reading Northern decided to paint the locomotive into the Iron Horse Rambles paint scheme that the Reading used in the 1960s. It had a 3-hour layover in Jim Thorpe, so me and Mike Burkhart and John Regan, we ran over to Shamokin, up in the Anthracite region, where the North Shore River was running excursions for a fundraiser. This is in downtown Shamokin. And out on the line, they had a switcher on each end, and ran out and back trips, opposite directions from Shamokin, one direction in the morning, one direction in the afternoon. After chasing that, it was back to, we stopped in Ashland, where this former streetcar that was converted into a diner and then into a storage shed is sitting, and it is looking for a home. The owner wants to redevelop the property, doesn't want to see the streetcar torn down, and is looking for a home for his streetcar. Also,
Any idea on
naturally,
the ancestry, Pierre Steve?
I've seen two different things on it. One said it was East Penn Railways. The other one said it was either Pottstown or Pottsville. I'm not sure what the actual ancestry is. If someone knows, wants to type it into the chat, that would be great. Also in Ashland is the Pioneer Tunnel. It's a coal mine tour and a little steam locomotive for ride. And here we see the steam locomotive coming up to the beginning point here at in Ashland. It takes you out about a mile. They give you a little talk about coal mining in the region, and then they bring you back in again. Once that was done, back over to 2102, we're back at East Monomoy Junction again. Same location, just a wider view. And then the sun finally came out near Molino as the train was approaching Port Clinton. There's this big long field there, runs probably close to almost a half mile probably. We were parked at the end, the Jim Thorpe end of the field. And there were people all down here, down into Molino as you approach Route 61. Fortunately, when the engine went by here, we were able to get in the car and shoot out, while most of the crowd was still shooting the train as it proceeded towards Port Clinton. Fortunately, that worked in our favor because we got to the traffic light at Route 61, and we only had about a 5-minute delay getting through there. But everybody who shot the train after us then got in their cars and tried to get out. Wound up with a really long, I guess 20 minutes or more delay getting out on the Route 61. Fortunately, it got us out there in time to get ahead of it again. Here it is coming out of Port Clinton. Pretty much the same bridge you saw it going under on the first shot, but just in the opposite direction. This locomotive is running again this Saturday. I will be back up there again, ready to shoot it again. It'll be a lot of fun. Great to see a Reading T1 back in service. On the way home, I stopped in Oaks, Pennsylvania, which is near Valley Forge, more or less. On display next to the old Oaks Depot, which there's no track there anymore, is this locomotive that was at one time the Gimbel's Flyer from the 1936 World's Fair. It looks like a streamlined steam engine. It's actually diesel powered or some kind of mechanical power. It could be gas. After its stint as the Gimbel's Flyer, it wound up in Kennywood, the big amusement park out in the Pittsburgh area for many years. And then somehow it found its way to Oaks. Anyhow, it's up against the building, and the only time you can really shoot it is on the longest days of the year, when the sun crosses over onto the other side of the engine barely. I was there just a little bit too early to get the sun crossing over, so I'm kind of wedged up against the station here to get the shot. Now we're local. Right now I live about 2 or 3 blocks from Conrail Shared Assets, Pennsgrove Secondary. And when the train comes past my house in the morning around 9:30, it goes down to Deepwater. It runs around its train and comes back out again, coming back up past the house again, anywhere between 11 and noon. So if it goes down in the morning, the sun's out, I can get out and chase it. Anyhow, this is actually on the southbound trip. I heard it at the grade crossing 2 blocks away, hopped in the car, ran down to Deepwater. Here's a train going south into Deepwater still. Here it is running around its train. That's the Carney's Point generating station in the background. It was converted. They stopped using coal on May 31st. The announcement came rather quickly. The state bought out the coal contract in early May. And the coal train you see on the right-hand side there had already come down for unloading. And was waiting to go back out again. Usually they unload the trains and take them back out again in about 3 or 4 days. Anyhow, the coal contract was killed while the train was there. And this 110 car coal train has no home right now. It is still sitting in Carney's Point in the yard because the mine doesn't want it back. There's no customers for it. So this little homeless coal train, big homeless coal train is still sitting in Carney's Point. Here comes our local out of Carney's Point, heading back north again. It's Conrail Shared Assets Train CA11 for those taking notes. Here it is coming up through Pensgrove, not far from my house. And then I grabbed the drone and headed out to the marshlands up around Bridgeport, just about 6 or 7 miles north of here. We've got some aerial shots. The line does feature 3 movable bridges. And here it is crossing the movable bridge over Raccoon Creek at Bridgeport. If you look sharp, you can see the Commodore Barry Bridge over the Delaware River at the very top center of the photo. These bridges are all now controlled remotely. After the train crossed the last grade crossing to the south, the bridge slowly began to close on its own. And then once it was closed, the train came across. And then once the train was clear, it opened up again. On Father's Day, I rode a trolley trip in Philadelphia using Kawasaki car number 9000, organized by the Friends of Philadelphia Trolleys. The 9000 is celebrating, well, it was the first of the Kawasaki built cars, or K cars as they call them, in Philadelphia. It came in 1980. So it was celebrating its 40th anniversary, although the 40th anniversary came and went during COVID. So in its 42nd year, they had a fan trip to celebrate its 40th anniversary. And they took it all over the city for photos. You can see the destination sign there. It says Monahan's LRV. Bill Monahan is usually the operator on these trips. And about 4 years ago, we figured out how to hack the destination signs. It's controlled by a card. You got to program the card back at headquarters. But anyhow, we now have Bill now has a card with all kinds of cool destinations on it that we use on fan trips. Here's our car on the right, meeting a regular Route 11 car coming in near the 40th Street portal that goes into the Center City Tunnel. And now we're in the Center City Tunnel at 36th Street. That's our car going inbound, a car going outbound on the opposite track. The Route 36 destination sign there, Front and Market Streets. The streetcars no longer go to Front and Market Streets. The Route 36 would have gone there prior to the tunnel being built a long time ago. Once again, that's just some fun we have with the destination signs. Still underground at 36th Street. And back up on the surface again, this is at the end of Route 34 on Baltimore Avenue. And our car coming out of Baltimore Avenue. We stopped at this mural on Baltimore Avenue. If you look to the left there, you'll see a mural with a streetcar on it. Heading down to Route 13, we do photo stops at interesting places, such as these these row homes. Route 62 is long gone. I guess I don't know if it's still there's a bus route or not. It's gone as a trolley route. But for a while we had the Route 62 destination sign up as we headed towards Yaden. Churches make good backdrops for photos. We did a couple of photo stops at churches. Different church. You can't probably see it too clearly on your screen, but at this point, the destination sign says we're going nowhere in particular. We are crossing over the former Baltimore, Ohio main line in Darby. This is now CSX's Philadelphia subdivision. Still a busy route. At one time, it was the only streetcar crossing left in the United States, a streetcar and a mainline railroad. As trolleys were phased out of different cities, all these crossings vanished, and leaving only this one left. Since the streetcar revival started back in the 1980s, and new systems that come up and been put in, there are now several places where streetcars cross railroads, including Tampa, Portland, Dallas, a few others. But this might be the only one where the streetcar is actually in the street when it crosses. The other ones might be private right-of-ways for the streetcars crossing over the mainline railroad. Memphis has one. Here we are up at the Yaden Loop. Yaden and Darby are the two places where the Philly system actually leaves the Philadelphia city limits. And then we went down on the Eastwick Loop on Route 36, which is down near the Philadelphia airport. That's our car coming out of the loop on the right, with a regular service car going in on the left. On the way home from that trip, I caught wind that Amtrak 662, the locomotive wrapped in the old Phase 3 paint scheme for a video game company. It's an advertisement, is what it actually is. I caught wind that was coming down on the Crescent, so I got down to Prospect Park and shot it there. The contract for this wrap has long ago expired. It expired back on May 1st. But enough folks in management, Amtrak management, think the wrap is pretty cool, and they're in no hurry to take the wrap off. So until it starts to peel badly, the wrap will likely stay on, but it's a day-to-day thing at this point. At any time now, the contract's up. Any day now that wrap could come off. I had to go to Center City one day. I rode Patco in, and I did some shooting at the station where I got off at 9th and 10th and Locust Street in Center City, Philadelphia. And when I was done, I went back to 9th and 10th and Locust and waited for my outbound train to come. Besides, I needed some Patco photos for my still not finished Philadelphia book, which has grown massively. For those of you who ordered the Philadelphia book, the 100-page Philadelphia book, you're going to wind up with something that's going to be around 150 pages. I'm still putting it together. The longer it takes me to put it together, though, the more pages you're going to get. So patience is on your side at this point. To get from Philadelphia into New Jersey, Patco uses the Ben Franklin Bridge, which has the Patco tracks on the outside with highway lanes in the middle. And here we are coming up out of Philadelphia across the bridge. Big steam again, headed west. And when you head west these days, a good stop is Cumberland, Maryland, where Western Maryland Scenic has restored former Chesapeake and Ohio 1309. It only runs once a day on Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays. So you got to sort of plan. So you got to plan your trips to catch that one trip. Here you see the train coming out of the Western Maryland Scenic Yard in Ridgely, West Virginia. If you do it right, you can catch the train 3 times on the run up to Frostburg, Maryland. Unfortunately, it's like I said, it's 1 trip a day, so 3 times is all you're going to get it. This is at Helmstedter's Curve outside of Cumberland. And then passing underneath an old Western Maryland signal bridge, the line is X Western Maryland. About halfway between Cumberland and Frostburg. And then arriving in Frostburg. That was it for the chase. It gets pulled backwards down the hill. We went back down into Cumberland. We got this train on CSX with Union Pacific Power. The railroad was running an ice cream train out of Frostburg that evening, so we stuck around. Diesel powered, but we stuck around for it. Leading the train up the hill was GP 3501, painted in the Western Maryland circus paint scheme, which is one of my favorites. Even though Western Maryland itself never had GP 30s, this is a creation by the Western Maryland Scenic. On the back is a really ugly F40. Anyhow, the ice cream train originated in Frostburg, so they had a deadhead from Cumberland up to Frostburg. So here we are on the deadhead move going uphill. And here's a deadhead move arriving in Frostburg. Frostburg managed to not advertise the ice cream trains very well after complaining that the Western Maryland Scenic did nothing for the town. So like the 2 trips were scheduled. 1 trip had a few riders on it. They canceled the 2nd trip. So it was back down the hill after just a short 40-minute trip out of Frostburg. But we went back down to the signal bridge. The light wasn't quite dark yet. It was after sunset. So we set up our strobes and shot the back of the train at this point. This train is heading back downhill to Cumberland. Shot the back of the train with the 501 going underneath the Western Maryland signal bridge. Railroad was kind enough to leave the headlights and flash lights on the locomotive for our photo. The next day, we're at the Everett Railroad, which is running trips with this really cool Lehigh Valley switcher out of Roaring Spring. Nice looking train set with the ex Jersey Central coaches. It went from Roaring Spring down to Martinsburg, not a very far run, only a few miles. But the leisurely pace meant we could catch it a few times. An old school building up on the hillside there. At Martinsburg, there's a Y, so they wide the train to head back to Roaring Spring. This is back in Roaring Spring, just beyond the station. For the 2nd trip, they decided, since they didn't want to back up out of Roaring Spring, they went up to a passing siding just outside of town to run around the train. So there's a train going up to the passing siding to run around. And then a few minutes later, coming back in after running around back into the station in Roaring Spring. There it was off to the Pennsylvania Trolley Museum, which was having the West Penn traction meet going on. So a lot of stuff was running. This is near Washington, Pennsylvania, out on the west end of the state. Here we see a former Philadelphia car. It used to run on the Red Arrow lines down to Sharon Hill and Media. They ran 3 different parades of trolleys during the day. For the first 2 parades, we were up at the Everett. Got there for the 3rd parade, which is all Pittsburgh cars, Pittsburgh area cars anyhow. So the next several shots are going to be of Pittsburgh area cars in service at the museum. These are all taken at the Fairgrounds station, which is off museum property, but it's adjacent to the local fairgrounds. And during the fair, the Trolley Museum runs shuttle trains up to the fair. They do very well with those, all kinds of stuff running. Here we see a PCC car from Pittsburgh. And of course, those who know me know I like my PCC cars. This car ran on the West Penn line. I am not as familiar with Pittsburgh cars as I should be, so you'll need to consult the museum's website for more details on some of these cars. Here we see another PCC from Pittsburgh. This one painted in the Port Authority Transit white with striping. And the other PCC in the older Pittsburgh scheme coming back down. And our PCC. PATransit, and both of the PCCs waiting at the fairground station. The West Penn car again. Recently restored, looks really sharp. Excuse me. Then we did night photos at the museum. They're developing a location next to their main shop called Main Street or Trolley Street or something similar to that. Phil asked if the museum is Pennsylvania trolley gauge. It is. It's not standard gauge. It is Pennsylvania broad gauge. So anyhow, they're constructing this the city scene near their main shop building, including putting in a new station. You see the platforms there on the right-hand side. So since this was a construction zone, we decided to do the night photo session using work cars. So here we see a line car next to the station platform, wire car next to the West Penn car with some workers working on the track. Here's a couple of guys up there working on the wire, live wire. I know the car is insulated and all that good stuff. They got the gloves on and everything. But still, I don't know if I could get up there and grab hold of the live wire like they did. I just not something I would be crazy to do. The big reddish building in the background there, that's their main shop building there. Their main display barn, actually, I guess. They got a shop at their museum site itself. The main museum site is about a half mile or so up the line. It's really a spread out operation. They got a lot of neat stuff going on here. Then they brought out a side dump car to pose in the scene. And the work crane, that was kind of cool. Next morning, I went over to North Versailles, PA, to the Westinghouse Bridge. I've tried shooting this bridge twice before this year. If they're never shooting it at all, I've been at it 3 times now. And finally got it in good light. You can only shoot this scene of Amtrak's Pennsylvanian on the longest days of the year, from like the 1st of June until mid-July, because of the sun angle. The Pennsylvanian leaves Pittsburgh at 7:30 in the morning, gets here about 7:50, and the sun isn't down in the valley enough to get the shot any other time of the year. Finally got the Westinghouse Bridge shot, which is old US 30. Finally got it in good light. As part of the West Penn traction meet at the Pennsylvania Trolley Museum, they had a tour of the PATransit shops, light rail shops up in Pittsburgh. So I backtracked to Pittsburgh for the tour. And this was a pretty cool tour. They let us into the shops, and I don't know if they intended to or not, but we kind of just went off on our own and wandered around. I'm not sure if they actually intended to do that or if they just lost control of the crowd. But there was really a tour where you could get out and wander and get some pretty decent photos. You just went wherever the crowd wasn't. This is their parts car, I believe. They have one car that's been decommissioned and is used only as parts now. They let us down to the pits. That was kind of cool. And underneath the cars in the pits, as far as shop tours goes, this is one of the better ones I've been on. It was a lot of fun. Here we see a car that is wrapped, I believe, celebrating the 50th anniversary of PATransit. And we also got to go into the operations center. Once again, a very cool tour. On the way home from Pittsburgh, my timing was such that I could stop in Mount Union, Pennsylvania, and get the westbound Pennsylvania. This is crossing the Juniata River in Mount Union. On the point is Amtrak 50th anniversary unit number 46. Okay, so why did they make the 50th anniversary unit number 46 instead of using number 50? The answer to that is that this engine was, I think, the first one to get the 50th anniversary graphics put on it. And it was supposed to debut on President Biden's inaugural train, him being the 46th president. Of course, those plans were scuttled when things went crazy down in Washington. The Secret Service says, no way you're going to ride an inauguration train. But that's why number 46 got the 50th anniversary graphics. Okay, Woodstown Central Railroad. This is my local railroad. I went to high school in Woodstown, just about 2 blocks from this grade crossing here. So it's kind of my hometown railroad. What it is the former Pennsylvania Reading Seashore Lines branch to Salem, New Jersey, passing through Woodstown. It went to Conrail. Conrail sold it to the county. Salem County owns the railroad now. And they've had a variety of operators on there, including West Jersey Railroad, West Jersey Short Line, Southern Railroad of New Jersey, and U.S. Rail. And U.S. Rail was a disaster. They just, anyhow, over the last many years, 5 or 6, 7, 8 years, traffic has dwindled on this line. Where the last customer is in Woodstown, it's that farmers exchange you see across the street behind the sign, and it only gets a dozen cars or so a year during fertilizer season in the spring. So the lines become entirely dormant for the most part, for most of the year, and no traffic beyond Woodstown out to Salem. Anyhow, the new contract operator on the line is SMS Lines, the folks who have the Baldwins over at the Pure Land Industrial Park over in Bridgeport. And SMS has brought in some fresh ideas. Normally, I wouldn't get excited over rail bikes, but rail bikes are on the line right now. This was the ribbon cutting a couple of weeks ago to reopen the line for rail bike service. And SMS has made it very clear that rail bikes are just an interim piece of this. They are going to be bringing back freight service. This is Jeff Such. He is the president of SMS Lines, and is helping to back this all this new development going on over here. First thing they're going to do is put a transload facility in west of Woodstown. That is going to immediately bring back freight service on this line several days a week. SMS is a transload facility over in Bridgeport, Pure Land. It's plugged. It's just too much over there, more than they can handle. So they're moving some of that traffic over here to Woodstown. That'll bring back freight service. They also have, they've acquired passenger cars, and they have a steam engine, and their goal is to bring actual tourist train service over to this line by the end of the year. steam passenger service over to the line by next year. And like I said, freight service probably in the next couple of months. So rail bikes, not so exciting, but in this case, it's kind of cool because it means my little hometown railroad is finally coming back. Here's the high rail truck that trailed the rail bikes going north on the very first rail bikes trip. And then most recently, I went down south. My good friend and editor of my competing magazine, Trains Magazine, Jim Rinn, passed away back in March, and they had his funeral down in his hometown of Franklin, North Carolina last weekend. So I went down south, and while it was largely not a rail fanning trip, it was mostly a put on the miles, go to the ceremonies, and put on some miles coming home trip. I did get a chance to shoot a few trains. Here we see a very late running Capital Limited coming through Shenandoah Junction, West Virginia. On last Thursday on the way down. Then was just put some miles on. I got down to Jonesboro, Tennessee, to set up for a night shot. The night shot I wanted was the other direction, but no trains came from that direction. So I settled for a train from, this is a southbound or westbound train going through Jonesboro. Next, they had some time before the evening public service for Jim over in Franklin, North Carolina. So hung around Jonesboro a little bit, got this train going past the Tennessee Hills Distillery. Jonesboro is a historic town, a lot of cool old buildings in it. Big tourist area. It's not far from Johnson City, Tennessee. I backtracked up to Johnson City to this location here. You got a westbound train. On the point is the locomotive from Norfolk Southern's Heritage Fleet, painted for and its predecessor, Interstate Railroad. It's called the Creamsicle in the by the rail fans because of its orange and cream colors. Also in Jonesboro, this is a train going east past some old buildings. Union Pacific Power on the point, even though this is a Norfolk Southern line. That evening was Jim's public service. The following day was the private service in Franklin, and Franklin's not near a whole lot of anything. And I had work to do, so I spent most of the day, other than the service, working. Then had dinner with some folks that evening. But the next morning, I went over to Bryson City, North Carolina, to the Great Smoky Mountain Railroad. I've never seen their 280, number 1702 in service, even though it's been around for 25 years now. Finally got a chance to chase 1702. Ex-US Army locomotive, a little bit ungainly, but. And the Great Smoky Mountains is just painted it into a pseudo Southern Railway freight scheme. Looks pretty good. It's a huge train, monster train. On the back of the train are diesel helpers. This is a going away shot of the diesel helpers in the back of the train. That evening, I went up to Abingdon, Virginia, along Norfolk Southern, the old Norfolk and Western, and set up for a night shot there. The Abingdon Depot. The house on the right is the old section man's house. He lived there back when they lived along the railroads that they maintained. And then the next morning was pretty much drive home along the old NNW. I got this train once again with UP Power going past the depot at Meadowview. There was some traffic interfering with it, so I had to stop at a passing siding. So I got ahead of it again, coming out of the siding at Glade Spring. And this is the train that interfered with it. This is the other end of the siding, a train heading west or south out of Glade Spring. Somehow I managed to get ahead of it again, caught it up at Rural Retreat, station that was made famous by O. Winston Link. He did one of his famous night shots here And it was here, Link did audio recordings as well. And it was here he did his classic Christmas Eve recording, the church bells. As a steam locomotive passed through the town at night on Christmas Eve. It's available online. I would highly recommend looking it up and giving it a listen. Behind that train was another freight with the interstate unit that I shot a few days before in Jonesboro coming up. So now we got a eastbound creamsicle. And I stopped, got gas, got a snack, drove up to a place called Vicar outside of Christiansburg, Virginia. And lo and behold, I was ahead of that UP train again. So I got it for a third time. And also at Vicar, other direction, this is Norfolk Southern stack train ready to go west. And that is going to bring an end to the slides. Let me stop the screen share here. Got one announcement to make before we conclude, and that is on July 9th, I'll be doing a show for Picnic Rail over in Blandon, Pennsylvania. Phil Reppert puts it together every year. It's you get together around 1 or 2 in the afternoon along Norfolk Southern's X-Ready main line, have snacks and sodas and watch trains go by. At 5 o'clock, Phil and his crew put on this really great barbecue chicken dinner with those cool Amish purple eggs. They're really neat. And it's a good time. But once it gets dark, I'll be putting on a show. I'll be presenting, hopefully it'll be finished in time. I'll be presenting my new multimedia show on steam in Pennsylvania. So if you are in the area on July 9th, by all means, come out to Picnic Rail. It's always a good time. So that's going to wrap up the show. The next program is going to be probably in 3 weeks. If I can get my act together. That will be on July 20th. So on July 27th, I'll be coming back from Cincinnati. I'm doing a program for the Cincinnati chapter of the National Railway Historical Society, which, other than Picnic Rail, is going to be my very first presentation in person to a railroad group since March of 2020. So that's going to be kind of fun. So next show is then, and I'm going to sign off for the folks on YouTube. And I'll see all of you folks on YouTube in 3 weeks. And let me